It's a 388-year-old institution whose members, known as Immortals, are tasked with safeguarding the purity of the French language. This Thursday, by electing acclaimed Lebanese-born novelist Amin Maalouf, the Academie Française, choosing a dual national to head the august body. Amin Maalouf, at 71, who had been running against Jean-Christophe Ruffin, a diplomat, journalist, and novelist who's also a member of the Academy, an academy which has only had 33 members since it was founded by the Cardinal Richelieu under Louis XIII. Well, for more, let's go to London and Rebekah Vince, lecturer in French at Queen Mary University, London. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Thank you for the invitation.
Before we talk about Amin Maalouf, are you jealous that the English don't have an academy to safeguard their language?
No, definitely not. I think it's a very specifically French institution. It's about the preservation and also tracking the transformation of the French language. I think it's a very welcome initiative to have Amin Maalouf at its head. As you mentioned, a dual national, having dual citizenship, being born in Lebanon, a native Arabic speaker, which also shows how France is a multilingual nation and the French-speaking world goes beyond France itself.
Goes beyond France itself, because of course, France has, the Académie Française has had foreign nationals before. Senegal's first president, Léopold Senghor, most notably comes to mind, but to have one as its perpetual secretary, as it's known, that's really, what does that tell you about the times?
I think it shows that this academy can become more dynamic, that it can become a space not only of safeguarding the French language, but also stretching the French language. My hope is that with Amin Maalouf at its helm, it will become more of a cedar tree than an ivory tower, which can be both resilient and rooted in Frenchness, but also reaching out to the multiplicity of languages within French itself and being open to inclusivity.
Well, let's talk about that inclusivity, because that's been one of the big issues. There's been pushback from the Académie Française over a review of what is gender neutral, what is feminine, and what is masculine in the French language.
Yeah, exactly. So French is a gendered language, very different to English. For example, even the word lecturer is gendered masculine as gendered male as maître or master. If you feminize that, it makes it maîtresse, which is a very loaded language in French. So it's about either reclaiming words that have been tainted or about going with the masculine as the overall term and neutralizing it. This also relates to groups of people. So, for example, in French, you would have a group of all women and one man that would be gendered as masculine plural. So there's this conversation in France about, and in the wider French-speaking world, about including a dot and an E and an S to make room for this plurality of genders and also of numbers.
And what's Amin Maalouf's religion when it comes to inclusivity?
Amin Maalouf speaks about a religion of coexistence in his writing. He grew up in a religiously diverse context in Lebanon, to a Christian family, but obviously, as with Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, all have a multiplicity of expressions within them. And he's very much for an inclusive secularism which can appreciate freedom of conscience alongside freedom of choice and freedom of expression. So I think it's an exciting time for France and for the wider French-speaking world.
You know, Rebekah, when I was growing up, there was the then French president who instituted laws to ban English words in the French language. It didn't quite work. And now you see that the French language, the number one country that speaks French is no longer France. It's the Democratic Republic of Congo. And that's going to only increase as populations in French-speaking Africa grow. Do you feel as though the French are more accepting of change?
Yes, I would say so. I think the relationship between French and English is related to kind of legacies of colonial rivalries. But notably, Amin Maalouf contributed to a manifesto which came out in 2007, around this time of the year, what's called the rentrée littéraire, the kind of back-to-school reading list. And the manifesto was called Pour une littérature au monde en français, towards a world literature in French, thinking about world literature in relation to Frenchness, but also in relation to the multiplicity of languages, partly in competition to world literature in English, but also going beyond that, thinking about French as a world language relativized among other world languages, including in other French-speaking countries, for example, Wolof. Behind me, I've got the Zulma review Apulé, named after the 2nd century Berber writer Apuleius. And its tagline is littérature in the plural du monde entier, literatures of the entire world. And it includes French, but also texts in the original language. It translates French texts, for example, Aimé Cedar, Martinican philosopher and anti-colonial writer, from French into Wolof. So it's more about an exchange and a migration of language, whereas in the past, one might have spoken about a contamination of other languages. I think now it's more about this idea of migration, enriching language as it does culture.
And in fairness to the Académie, they are changing a little bit with the times. We saw, for instance, recently they admitted the great Latin American writer Maris Vargas Llosa as one of the Immortals. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's an example of opening up to other cultures, of also bringing more women into the academy to balance out the gender gap there, and also to appreciate how these languages are world languages that interact with others in a wider Francosphere.
Now, coincidence of the calendar, Amin Maalouf is elected by his peers on the day that France's president happens to be in Corsica, which speaks an Italian dialect, not a French one, in fact. The Académie Française has always been against regional languages. Is that going to change?
I sincerely hope so. In this manifesto toward a world literature in French, it wasn't just about the wider French-speaking world, but also about France and about how France itself is a multi-regional country. It's got very distinctive cuisines, but also dialects and languages. We've got to think of Alsatian, Basque, Breton, and also, of course, we've got Corsica and we've got Creole in the French Caribbean, these overseas departments. So I think this is also about decolonizing the French language. And I think Amin Maalouf is in a perfect position to be able to go about administering that process.
So you think that that's going to happen sooner rather than later, that the French state will recognize those regional languages?
I hope with Amin Maalouf at its helm, recognising the multiplicity of language within French, his Arabic-speaking background, and also his appreciation of France beyond Paris, will hopefully instigate this process that is long overdue, about appreciating regional languages not as a threat to French, but as a complementarian element of what it is to be French in France and the wider French-speaking world.
Rebekah Vince, I get back to my first question. You have this institution that's had as its members the likes of Voltaire, Victor Hugo. Again, seen from your side of the channel, is this a quaint relic, or does the French Academy, the Académie Française, have genuine power?
I think that there is a canonical status, a kind of ivory tower status to the Académie Française. And that's where these post-colonial writers and these post-migrant writers are able to kind of right back to the empire, as it were. But I think what's really interesting is that now we have someone working within the system who's been working within the system for a while, who's now been brought to its helm and is able to make some of these changes, not only financial changes that need to be made, but also in terms of revitalizing the French language and revalorizing it as not the sole possession of the nation state of France or of Paris, or indeed of the Academie Française, but going beyond it.
Rebekah Vince, so many thanks for joining us from London.
You're very welcome.
From the politics of wordsmiths, tributes pouring in for an actor of the silver screen. Michael Gambon has died at 82. You'll recall him most notably as playing the schoolmaster Dumbledore in the Harry Potter series.
It was foolish of you to come here tonight, Tom. The orders are on their way.
Michael Gambon may be best known for his role in Harry Potter, but he leaves behind a prolific body of work spanning decades, genres and generations. Gambon was born in 1940 in a working-class neighbourhood of Dublin. He moved to London with his family just after the Second World War.
I was Irish, and then I heard people talking English like that, you know. So I started talking like that. Oh, hello, so lovely to see you.
A local socialist theatre was his introduction to acting. He then became a founding member of the National Theatre in London. That was the start of one of the most prolific careers on the West End. For his roles on London stages, he was nominated for a record 13 Olivier Awards, winning 3. At the same time, he was taking on challenging parts in film and television. He won critical acclaim for his performances in groundbreaking works like the BBC series The Singing Detective.
Look, this is a dream.
Always a critical darling, it wasn't until his mid-60s that Michael Gambon became a global star.
But in the end, only one will go down in history.
That's when he took on the role of wise wizard Albus Dumbledore in the Harry Potter films.
You put on all that costume and the makeup with the beard on, the wig, and suddenly that sort of takes over the image of the character, the half-moon glasses, lots of gold rings, and it's infectious.
After his death at age 82, the theatre and film worlds are mourning him as one of the greatest actors of his generation.
We have more news coming up for you, plus today's business and sports. Stay with us. You're watching France 24.